I hope you enjoy this special episode from the Idea Citizen Summit, Building Influence, presented by Cohesion, Smart Building Technology. Learn more at cohesionib.com.
Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to have you here live on LinkedIn or watching the recording or wherever you are. My name is Joshua Freedman. I'm going to be the moderator today. We're going to be talking about shifts in leadership and how leadership today might require a different way of thinking about influence, going beyond what once upon a time every leadership definition talks about: influencing, enrolling, engaging others, thinking about what that looks like today. And maybe there's something different that has to happen in the world today. Just tiny changes that we've experienced in the last few decades maybe necessitate some changes in the way we think about influence. We have a great panel today, and we have one more panelist who's on the way. I want to get started with a kickoff question. I'd like you each to introduce yourself and answering the question, what concerns you or worries you about this word influence? Karl, let's start with you.
Thank you, Josh. The word influence, I think, to me, has always, like you said, always been a part of the leadership capability that we're really celebrating and wanting and looking for when we're recruiting and hiring and promoting leaders. And I think as we look in the world about influencers, I mean, we always have we have these new influencers that are out on TikTok and doing YouTube videos and all sorts of social media channels. We're starting to see that it's not necessarily, I think that it has this connotation of not being authentic. There's an ulterior motive, maybe not even a worldwide generosity motive. It's more about the person getting something. It's their way. I'm influencing someone to do something that I want, not necessarily something that might be good for you or the world, but it's something that I think is good that might actually be only good for me. So I think that's where influence can get into trouble.
Abhi, how about you? What concerns you about the word influence?
That's me. Got it. Yep. Hey, Abhi. I've given it a little bit of thought. I think the challenge that I have is how quickly influence is becoming divorced from responsibility. Okay, that ultimately is the big challenge for me. And as Karl mentioned, the biggest challenge is like, hey, I can have as many followers, posts, reposts, but the reach shouldn't influence actually start when you've left the room, after you've said something, and that is what should be measured. I think true influence isn't necessarily about being seen. It's what happens after you've left the room, and after you've had to say what you had to say.
Great. We'll come back to this question when Kumud joins us. This panel, we're talking about influence without the spotlight. So let's just continue with Abhi's point. What does it mean to influence without that kind of visibility, without the spotlight? And I'd love to ask the audience first, if you're watching, tell us in the chat, what does influence mean to you now? And is there such a thing as influence without the million followers? Karl, let's go back to you.
So I remember early on in my corporate career, there used to be a course called Influence Without Authority. And it was all about how anyone can be an influencer in the organization. You didn't have to have the leadership title. Any employee can influence. And it's really about understanding what the situation is and presenting a solution that you believe in and to try to get other people to follow along with what that is. So that, I believe, and back then I believed was accurate and appropriate. And I also think that it lacked more of a global perspective of what is right for everyone. So what is important for everyone, and maybe what perspectives were not being taken into consideration. So I think that's the key success factor nowadays for influence, to be more maybe inspirational. And I totally agree with Abhi. It's what happens after you leave the room and what people actually decide to take action on. Were you inspiring enough to have them see your point of view, integrate it with their point of view, see that there are merits to it, and take action on it? So I think that's really the important part.
The Kumud is just joining us. Hooray! I'm glad you overcame the technical difficulties. So Kumud, we're just kind of introducing and wondering what concerns you about the word influence?
I would say the one thing that might concern me regarding influence would be like, how much would people add it to a term such as a title? Like, do we need to have a title to influence others, and how much is it related to performance? Like, are we saying that influence is directly proportional to the performance of the title we are in or the role that we play? So I would say that these two things.
Yeah, and that really echoes what others have said. And Carl pointed out, in this world of influencers, there may not be substance to that. So, Abhi, let's go back to you. Can you think of a situation where you were influenced by somebody in the way that you're talking about this, like after they left the room? What happened for you in that experience?
I've been a part of some really unique ideas and strategies and organizations and helping to build teams, culture, product. And for me, I enjoy the number 2 to number 6. I'm very rarely a number 1. That's not really my role. In a world for me that has been, when somebody leaves the room, does their toxicity follow them? And who they're being, is that still what's discussed? Or is the idea and strategies that they brought forth because of who they truly are and who they represent, is that what stays and keeps the conversation moving forward? Very recently, I was in a conversation with a CEO of mine, and you could tell very quickly, you could tell that he was struggling with a concept, he was struggling moving a team forward, but when he left the Zoom chat here based in Atlanta, and he was in Illinois, when he left the Zoom chat, it's almost like the other participants on the Zoom call just went, all right, who needs happy hour? Is it 5 o'clock yet? Right? That type of energy is, of course, a bit toxic. Sometimes it can be a bit freeing, but in that moment of doubt, are we engaging that idea? Are we engaging that strategy, or are we talking more about the individual and, in this case, strengths and more so his weaknesses? That happens across boardrooms every single day. Let's not kid ourselves. And that has a tremendous impact from an efficiency perspective in a national, regional, global organization, whether we're trying to move people forward or not. A great example of this is Howard Behar, from Starbucks. Everybody knows about Howard Schultz. Not everybody knows about Howard Behar. This is an individual who built the culture and global expansion infrastructure for Starbucks. You never hear his name, and you kind of don't need to, because he's leading with authority, and he's leading with this idea of, maybe we call it quiet influence. It's not the influence that trends and that's cute on Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn on a neat hashtag, but it's influence. It's this quiet influence that truly transforms organizations.
So I think we're really now getting into my favorite topic of emotional intelligence, and recognizing that the impact that we have is only partly neck up. Right? There's a lot of the way we shape the conversation, we shape leadership, we shape culture, and has actually not that much to do with our brilliant ideas. Kumud, I want to go to you because you have a very interesting mix of this, where you have this very substantive real world work you do, and you made a decision a year ago. Why did you want to build a following on LinkedIn?
I would say most of us on LinkedIn are there because of business purposes. I think it was a year back I realized, especially me being from recruitment world, I realized that time and tide is changing. Those days are gone when people would identify themselves with a company. Maybe I work at Google or Amazon. That was it, and that's what they did for the next decade or so. And it was the best career move, most of the people would say. But then with the layoffs that happened, that made me realize that, what would be our identity without a company backing us. And that's where I realized that, personal branding would be the next big thing in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years, and who we are or what we are going to portray ourselves. It all would revolve around personal branding, and that's how I got into LinkedIn, and I wanted to position myself as a market leader in recruitment and HR. And I had these years of experience that I used to usually I would share with the candidates I would be talking to on day-to-day basis. And now I had a platform where I could reach to thousands or 100,000. So
You
that's
just passed 100,000 followers. That's really exciting.
yeah. Thanks for that. So that's
So
how
are you an influencer now?
I would say that, maybe I would like to inspire people more than influence them. But yeah, every single day with every post, I try to see if it makes a difference to even one individual who's going out there to give the interview or trying to negotiate for the salary or um, like, build, go for their next career move. Somehow impacts them to take the right step. So that's what my main aim is.
Abby, you're a managing partner. I don't know how many companies you're all managing at this point, but you have some significant reach. So are you an influencer?
I'd like to hope not. I don't think so. I think the reason my team will ask me for counsel in the same way Howard Bihar took his initiatives to grow Starbucks is it's really my perspective. It's a very quick glimpse from a high level into what's happening inside of the organizations that we invest in and that we run and that we consider to either acquire or partner with. So if that's what we're using to define influence, then I suppose so. I'd like to think the thoughts and ideas and strategies that I bring to the table are relevant enough for the leaders in the room to decide whether or not it is actionable. And if it is, great. If it's not, throw it out the window. I'm not in the business every single day.
So you want to be a different kind of influencer.
Yeah, that quiet influence, that soft power, if you will, that is in the room, that absorbs the information, receives it unabashed, unapologetically, without bias, and can truly make a decision without being attached to a specific expectation of an outcome. And that, to me, is the height of this idea that I think we're calling soft power or quiet influence.
Okay, I'm going to get some free coaching if you don't mind. Carl, I'll start with you. So I'm a CEO and founder.
Okay.
And I run an organization whose mission is advocacy. And we're trying to change the world. We have a really tiny ambition to increase the entire world's emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I get a message from people saying, Josh, you need to get out there. You need to be the face. You need to be the spokesperson. You need to be an influencer. And I'm kind of in Abby's camp. And I'm going like, I want to lift other people up. I want to be an amplifier. Mm-hmm. What do I do? How do I reconcile these two demands?
So one of the things that I've seen in the leaders that I coach and the CEOs and the C-suite is that they feel that same pressure that you're describing, that they need to be the face. They need to be the person that brings everyone together, that creates the solution, that provides the voice. And they can't. They can't do it alone. Is the message, is the ultimate message, is you have a whole team of people. You have people who believe in you, people who you've inspired to follow the same mission that you feel so deeply about, that it's really working with them and you can't reach everyone. You yourself cannot reach everyone. It's really engaging the team and the collective to help with that. So my question to you is, how did you get to this point in the past? It wasn't just you alone, obviously. And how can you use the resources that you have available to you to amplify the message that you alone can't just do by yourself?
Well, I want to come back to you because this part of my answer to Carl's question is I find a lot of people who I work with are reluctant to get out there, even to post on LinkedIn. They will say to me, I mean, we have an incredible team, like just my favorite human beings in the world working at 6 Seconds. And I see how magical they are with people and how they ignite something in people. And a lot of them are reluctant to get out there and share that in a social media platform. So how do I get them to use their voice in a way to amplify?
Yes, so you have to convince them that, now they don't want, it's not about just influencing one individual. If they want to make that difference, because 6 Seconds is trying to make a difference in the world, showcasing emotional intelligence. And I'm also one of those introverts who would always want to work behind the scenes. So for me, it was a very big step to put myself out there on LinkedIn. But what I realized was that I was showing up with intention, not for the vanity metrics. So, and not just for attention seeking, because trust me on this one, I don't want any attention on me. But what I would tell those employees would be that we are not trying to be viral here. This is not Insta or TikTok, specifically if you're talking about LinkedIn. We need to be valuable. So every single day of my life, I want to be valuable for a purpose, for a cause, or for an individual, trying to make that difference. So the kind of content also I put out there showcases me, and the message and the presence is real that we are not chasing any algorithms, but we are building the trust capital instead.
So really thinking about why we're doing what we do,
Yes.
using our voices in a way that's authentic and trust building, giving value, recognizing that the way we create change is by supporting, inspiring, lifting up others. Abhi, one more piece of advice for my free coaching session.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on Kumud just for a minute. You also need to show them why their voice matters. Like that's the biggest thing of all. Right? This is how you move people to create momentum, ideology, passion for something. If you're not showing them why their voice matters, why would they even speak up in an organization? Right? Pretend you're in a boardroom. You go first as CEO. All right. Well, you've already set your decision. You've already said what you've had to say. You're not letting anybody convince you otherwise or share their opinion and ideas. And hell, they might think your idea is complete hogwash, right? And so showing them why their voice matters is a big deal. And also being vulnerable. Leaders in the world of today, like one of the CEOs I'm working with for a portfolio company, for a portco, vulnerability isn't really his thing. Vulnerability is contagious. You know what else is contagious? The courage to say what's up.
This brings me to one of the questions that I think is important here is the difference between influencing, or the overlap, maybe it's not a difference, the intersection of influence and inspiration. Karl, I know you have some thoughts on this. Is it a continuum? Are they opposites? Influence, inspiration.
So I'm a big fan of and thinking. So it is both. It's both and. So I am a bigger fan of inspiration because inspiration ultimately leads to influence. So the influence is probably more related to actionability. So the influencing of someone to take the action and the inspiration of someone to be influenced to take that action. So as in coaching, as you know, we can't tell people what to do because they already know what to do. We just need to get that out of them. So that's the inspiration of asking the right questions to get them to think and bring out all the resources that they already have within them in order to be able to make the decision to take the action. So I think that is more of that inspiration, and coaches do not influence at all. It's the inspiration of the person to be able to make that decision on their own based on the resources that they have. So I think that it's an overlap. It's an and. They're not polar opposites at all. They are part of a continuum, and there is an overlap for sure.
I think for me in my coaching journey, learning that my job, what is my work and what is my coaching partner's work? And my work is about setting context, building trust, supporting, lifting up, magnifying. My coaching partner's work is actually doing the work.
Exactly.
And I think that shifted so much for me as a leader, but even more as a parent. And thank goodness I was studying coaching before I had teenagers, because I really needed it then.
Yeah, it has to be their decision. They're not likely to follow what you tell them to do or you provide the solution for, and you don't want to create that dynamic of that codependency anyway. So it's really helping them to figure it out for themselves by asking the right questions and not influencing them, but inspiring them to come up with the solution on their own. And they're more likely to do it then.
Right. And I know for myself in terms of as a CEO, my vision is so big that it's impossible to do it myself. And confronting that reality is really important. And
Absolutely.
saying, I don't need workers. I need owners.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the people we employ, by the way. I can't employ enough people. Our vision is 1 billion people practicing emotional intelligence. And, I can't employ enough people to do that.
Right.
I need owners who participate in this. And that requires some stepping back.
Yeah. One other thought that I had about influence, it's almost nefarious in a sense, because if people are open to being influenced without critical thinking that goes along with it, that's where dangerous things happen. So we definitely want an inspiration and the person thinking about it on their own and applying their own critical thinking to it to decide what the right action is. So I think that's a critical component of that.
Kumud, I want to go back to you. If you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self about building influence?
I would say that I wouldn't have thought that, it just comes with a title. Influence does grow when your actions consistently align with our value system and not just words. So I would definitely, for many years, I just thought that, the CEO of a company would be the one who would be most influencing because people have to listen to them. But now I don't think the same.
Abhi, how about you? Your younger self, what did younger Abhi need to know?
Definitely figure out the right hair product. Uh, all, all kidding aside, when I was younger, I wanted to impress. I wanted to impress everybody with my skill, with my ability, my wanting to work hard, show up, and I forgot that the real goal when I was younger, when looking to build influence, if I were to tell my younger self, is try to be useful. Don't necessarily only focus on being impressive, because that could be a bit of a recipe for disaster. Like, you could have all the creds in the world, right? You could go to the best Ivy League universities, but if you end up and if you're not useful, and I've run into many of these types of people from amazing educational academic institutions all across the world. But if they're not useful, then it's not helpful. And that helpful doesn't translate into value, which ends up in the toxicity of a culture that you don't want to be a part of. So that's what I tell myself. Stop being impressive and focus and shift that energy to being useful.
It really connects with what Kumud said earlier of giving value. And personally, when I go on LinkedIn, I really seek out, I go and I look for posts that I can participate in and say, how can I contribute to this person? And that, maybe I help one person, but maybe that's actually creating more value. Great, thank you. Karl, let's get the same advice from you. Younger Karl needed to know.
I think it's similar to what Abhi was saying, and goes a little farther as well, in that as you're younger, you may have more misconceptions about how much you actually do know. Like teenagers know everything, right? And the reality is we don't know what's out there in the world. So it's really understanding that you can't show up with this feeling, oh yeah, it all makes sense to me, I know exactly what to do. It's like, you don't. How can you ask those questions of genuine curiosity to figure out what else is missing, what's out there, what am I not thinking about? I know what my own worldview is and perspective is, but there are so many others out there and other experiences that I don't know. So how can those inform better decisions, better choice, being more mindful about operating in the world where we're taking into consideration everything we can as opposed to just the one thing that we're sure of, which was based just on our own experience. So that would be my advice.
Certainty is the enemy of learning.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I grew up with a story that I suspect a lot of us have heard, which is, if I'm smart, I'm valuable. If I know the answer, I'm valuable. I'll raise my hand in class and I'll get called on and I'll get praised because I know the answer. My dad will love me if I get good grades. If I achieve enough, then I will be. And that storyline of kind of seeking status, seeking approval, seeking valuing of myself because of these external markers pushed me to behave in ways that I think weren't that helpful. And one of the big lessons for me as a CEO continues to be all of those things that I got praise for are now in the way.
It's our childhood strategy to survive our childhood, basically, that we continue using, expecting life to be what our childhood was, and it's not.
Summer vacation! Kumud, you work with a lot of people who are in career transition. And so I imagine many of them struggle with the same question about kind of who do I want to be when I grow up? How do I step forward in my career? What advice do you give around this topic of kind of power, really?
It's all about first knowing what somebody exactly wants, because many, as you just talked about this topic about, since we were in school, we have been led by others to say that, this is the perceived notion of what exactly should we define as achievement or a good career move. So I always tell people that, first know yourself and know what you want, and not to copy others, and see how you can be your best credible self. And once they know what they're looking for, sometimes it's not always, most of the posts also on LinkedIn, I try to talk about the same, that don't just think about money or titles. Beyond that, what exactly is it that, would keep you going for the next decade, and, showing up every day in that career or in that job will become much better if it aligns with our purpose and the value that we want to share. And that is the main thing that I talk about, that, specifically if it is about influence, that real influence can happen even in the shadow and shadows. Like, it doesn't need to shout, and being consistent, credible, and building that quiet connection in the careers.
So I'm hearing a lot of keywords in our chat so far, and I'd love it if everybody who's on LinkedIn would put a keyword in the chat. Like, what's one word you're hearing that really resonates on this space of influence and this particular type of influence that we're talking about? I think one word for me that I keep hearing about is purpose, and being really clear about why am I showing up. Abhi, what's a keyword that's coming up for you?
Alignment. That's a big one, especially in one's career, whether you're guiding CEOs or you're just starting out. Maybe you're a mid-level professional, you still got maybe 20, 25 years in your career, or maybe you're ending your career. Maybe you're a small business owner, and you're finally putting together your succession plan after thinking about it for 15 years. I've been in the position, I've had a point in my life, I hit a ceiling and a point in my life where achievement for me didn't align with what I wanted to do, and it burnt me out. And I thought my voice mattered, and then it didn't. Not necessarily to other people, but to myself. And when I realized that, kind of going back to what I mentioned just a little while ago about the attachments that we have, I was so attached to this idea of who I wanted to be, and the suits that I wanted to wear, and the cars that I wanted to drive, and the country club I wanted to go to. I hate golf. There's so many things that I was attached to that I let that attachment get the best of me, and it burnt me out until I realized one thing, in that everybody has power. Right? Everybody, you step into your power every single morning. Whether you know it or not, you do. And power isn't control. And if we think about what power really is, it's capacity. It's the capacity to take on maybe a tough conversation for the day, whether it's with a business partner, whether it's with an employee, a colleague, or even a tough conversation with yourself. I got my health test back, and I had my levels checked, and there were a lot of numbers I was proud of and some numbers I wasn't. And now I eat salads for lunch every day, and I hate eating salads. Oh my gosh. This is the worst thing on the planet. I feel like it's more exercise. So power is in control, it's capacity, and alignment is the key word here. It really is the root of this idea we're exploring called quiet influence.
So I'm, again, coming back to these themes of emotional intelligence, this self-awareness, and emotions as guides to tell us, oh, this is something that's important for me. Kumud, keyword you're hearing?
I'm also hearing maybe how about emotional intelligence, because because we have to respond with empathy and not ego, and that's where real influence begins. Especially in the moments of uncertainty.
Karl, what's your keyword for the first part of our conversation?
I think it's about, choice. I think it's about choice. I mean, maybe it wasn't directly stated, but it is a choice in how we show up, how we decide to not engage in our egoic fixations, how to choose to include others, include other perspectives, integrate those other perspectives in our own. And that actually does build the emotional intelligence, right? When we're understanding others' perspectives and others' motivations and others' interests and passions, and really integrating them into our own and making choices and taking actions based on that, as opposed to just on our own patterns that we have.
Well, let's extend that. Abhi, you do a lot of work in the space of strategic partnerships. What do strategic partnerships and partnerships in general, what's the secret to partnerships that create influence?
Think about a moment in time. If you're watching this, or maybe now if you want, close your eyes. And think about a moment in time where you were having a conversation with somebody in person, whether it's at a coffee shop or at the office or just at home. And in that conversation, you can visualize you speaking with the other person and the other person's speaking with you, and they're saying words and you're saying words. So there's an exchange of words that's happening between the both of you. The height of building those joint venture strategic relationships happens when you see yourself having a conversation with somebody and you really pay attention to what you are feeling and how they are approaching your feelings and what they are also feeling. This is where breakthroughs happen. This is where culture happens, where technology and AI gets easily adopted. It's when innovation meets uncertainty. Before we start a conversation with somebody, we might be thinking, hey, I'm kind of uncertain of where this is going to go. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, maybe they're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm going to do my best here. And that level of strategic partnership will stop if we're not very aware of what they're saying and what their true felt needs are. In the world of lower middle market private equity, a large majority of the individuals that I work with, they're in their late 50s, early 60s, mid 60s, late 70s, and thinking, well, I want to exit my business for a variety of reasons. It could be I just want to sell, I've done well, my spouse wants to go travel the world, or maybe it's a health concern, whatever it may be. And if I'm not paying attention to really what they are saying and the underlying message, they won't want to transact with me. They won't want to build a relationship with me. And that's not a them thing, that's a me thing, and it's a me fault for not paying attention to what somebody is really saying, whether it's verbally or non-verbally. So from a strategic partnership and elevating that and pointing to emotional intelligence, this is the core of who humans are. Like, we're human beings, we're not human doings. And if we approach the problem as a human doing and we're talking to a human being, that's like you get an error code, right? That's a glitch in the matrix that nobody wants to talk about.
So what I'm hearing is there's this element of vitality, aliveness in this relationship, and emotions tell you, like, there's something great happening here. And that helps you go deeper into understanding what's really important for them and you. And if you find that shared mojo, incredible things can happen.
You got it.
So it's much easier for me to relate to doing that in that coffee shop. And Kumud, you do this every day on LinkedIn. So how do you create that same thing that Abhi's talking about in this very sort of abstract context of, posting and messaging and communicating? How do you build that connect?
It's all based on the verbiage of the post. And it's not me talking. I want others to talk along with me. So that's what I do. So I let others carry the message forward. And that's why you see so much of engagement on my posts, because I believe in influence by extension. How Abhi pointed out, that everybody is a collaborator on my post. So every comment that you see, that individual is a collaborator and they become my trusted messengers. And that is how I'm scaling. The visibility also scales. So they talk about this, it's happening to them in their daily lives, in their career, in their jobs, and maybe they never spoke about it, but when they see that message on LinkedIn, the post on LinkedIn, it makes them want to share their viewpoint. And I believe that's what maybe quiet leaders, I'm still, maybe I don't even want to call myself a leader. I just want to call myself a collaborator through the credibility of I'm choosing to partner with all the people who are commenting. So that's what I'm doing.
So I'm seeing a real common ground in all of our work here in these different spaces and places about this invitation and stepping forward and saying, let's co-create, let's find something together. Karl, it's probably obvious, but take us into coaching. How does that apply in your world?
So as we were having this conversation, I immediately thought about Simon Sinek and starting with why. So the starting with why is the why are we here? What's our purpose, our mission? And I think that the co-creation, the collaboration ends up in the what, which is the last piece. So the why is the first part. The how is, like in Kumud's space, the LinkedIn conversations that are happening and the collaboration that's happening there. And the what, we don't know what the what is until those conversations come to fruition. right? I think going in, not being married to a what outcome is critical for us in any inspiration or influence, if you want to call it whatever you decide to call it. It's really about building that, okay, we're here for a reason, the same reason. We're all here marching towards the same direction. We want to create a much more emotionally intelligent world where people will thrive and understand each other better and not be in conflict and war. And how are we going to do that? So let's work together with understanding some core principles, and then we don't know what the what eventually will be and how long it's going to take for that to happen. And it may be totally different from what we're expecting it to be, but we're creating that formula for success for that to happen. So it's really focusing on that importance of that shared mission, that shared vision of the reason we're together, and then how are we going to work collaboratively to produce whatever that result is.
Abhi, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it spurred something that just came to my mind. Now it's inspiring me to go do a keynote on, which would be kind of interesting. Who would have thought, right? This is great. The idea of creating quiet equity. We don't have to be loud about it. If we're showing up, if we're creating value before we show up somewhere, whether it's to a meeting or to a networking event or to something that we're running or doing or whomever, whatever it may be, just that little extra effort, that little extra something before showing up matters. Do we have 15 seconds for an example? Yeah. So I've recently gotten into the dental space, and we're doing a consolidation in the Northeast United States. And one of the docs that whose practices we're acquiring is a really big Steelers fan. And so before meeting him in person for the first time, right? Like I'm the guy that, hey, if you're going to invite me out for coffee, I'm on a plane to you. It doesn't matter. Let's go do it. I'll have lunch and fly back. Great. And I live in Atlanta, so easy peasy. So I fly to Pittsburgh. I meet him, his wife for lunch, and we all get to talking. And before meeting them, I kind of courier a package, so I mail them a package, and with all Steelers gear that's for his wife, and all the embroidery, the last name's embroidered on the ball cap and the jersey and everything. And I'm a big Lions fan. Like I don't want to break any hearts here, but I love the Detroit Lions. And I ended up getting Doc a Lions jersey, and with a little note on the jersey saying, "Hey Doc, I know you love the Steelers, so you can go jump in the lake." Signed by me. And he's like, this is so odd, but it feels so good. I don't know who you are, but I already like you. Imagine it's just, so imagine for a moment if I went there with a PowerPoint presentation, dressed up in a suit at lunch, eating a salad. I would be laughed at. He would say, no, we're not going to do this. And I think it's identifying that middle part of the personality, right? Like if you're an introvert, extrovert, maybe use a combination of both of those extremes and lean into who you truly are. And a lot of that starts with understanding, are we innovating here? Are we uncertain about what's going to happen? And in either case, if you can have a little fun with it, now you're being known for something that matters, not just being known. Two completely different things.
So if anybody wants to ask a question in the chat, please do. I want to turn, while we're waiting for questions to come in, I want to turn to a specific emotion we've mentioned, which is trust. So Kumud, what for you is the essence of building trust?
Essence of it would be definitely credibility, and trust would also be always showing up with intention, not just attention seeking. And I would say as long as I also believe in the 3 C's framework, which is clarity, consistency, and care, because clarity would build alignment and consistency builds reliability. Because it's only up to a certain level that we can go saying that influencing, but it all would end or start with credibility, because over a period of time, once we make ourselves credible, that's where the trust also comes into picture.
So baseline requirement of credibility, but then without these other ingredients. I find care fascinating because trust is a relational emotion, and it tells us about, does this person have my back? And I don't think we really believe this person has our backs if they don't think they actually care about us.
Yeah, care builds connections. Definitely, because that's when they realize we are saying that then influence becomes inevitable. Like we don't have to say that anything else matters more, because that's again part of the true emotional intelligence that we are talking about.
Karl, there's a question in the chat about childhood experiences, and maybe you can just connect it with trust.
Sure.
How does our early experiences shape the way we build trust?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Enneagram, and the Enneagram is all about the 9 different motivations that human beings have, and each one of those motivations is created as a result of nature and nurture, which includes part of our early childhood trauma, if you want to look at it that way. So absolutely, the way that you've interpreted your childhood trauma, and other people may not have, they may have had the same exact experience but not interpreted it as a trauma, will impact how you make decisions in the future, how trusting you are, as Kumud was talking about trust, how easy it is for you to trust versus how much more difficult it might be for you to trust. So absolutely, whatever experiences you've had will have an impact in your decision making. Are you going to trust others and follow what they say and then go along with that because you haven't had that betrayal that may have happened early on in someone's childhood, where they figured out that no, I have to question everything and look at every single detail and come up with every single possible negative consequence and come up with a solution or backup plan for that. So all different styles are going to emerge from those childhood experiences, which will impact how people make decisions.
Abhi, there's a question in the chat that you mentioned vulnerability before, and it really connects with what Karl was just talking about. If I am not feeling safe and I'm not used to being vulnerable, how do I actually cultivate vulnerability?
Think about it like this. I don't think it's simple. It's difficult. It took me a while to learn how to do that on stage and off. It's easy for me to hide behind a microphone when nobody's watching on radio. I had like the best face for radio. It was wonderful. I would say audit your presence, audit your promises, and if they for whatever reason don't match, if they don't align, if they don't match up, one, ask yourself why that's not happening. And as a result of asking yourself why, there will be negative self-talk. 100%. Right? And it could be anxiety, fear, frustration, isolationism, loneliness, whatever. So write all of those down and consider a little bit of self-exploration into your past and write down the corresponding examples into why you're feeling these emotions. Because emotional intelligence isn't just about other people, it's also about yourself. And then you'll learn this one truth, is that if your presence doesn't match up with your promises, what do you think happens? You're not going to trust yourself, and nobody ever will owe you their trust. So vulnerability, I think, is the intersection of, or is the analysis of the intersection of your presence and your promises.
I'm reminded of Stephen Covey's work, and I was talking to one of his sons who said to me, yeah, my dad always said, if you don't let people influence you, you cannot influence them.
Yep. And I had a workout session with a trainer of mine today, and he said, hey, we're going to go do this bench press, right? And I'm not trying to be Mighty Mouse. So here I am benching like 5-pound dumbbells because it's efficient, and I convince myself I get to go to the gym and leave. And he's like, no, we're really going to do this. Let's make it happen. And he helped me to overcome this negative self-talk I had about lifting the weight. I have a bit of a weak left shoulder. It's kind of annoying. Play a lot of tennis and squash and racquetball, and that was my biggest barrier. And if I didn't think about this, I promised myself I'm going to go to the gym, but my presence in the gym isn't matching up with the promise, and me lying to myself that I'm here, what's going on? And the moment I saw that, and it became very clear, I lifted 200-pound dumbbells. I'm totally kidding. I upped it from 5 pounds to 7.5 pounds, and I still got out of there in like 30 minutes.
Inch by inch. Kumud, what do you think about EQ or EI, AI? I think there's a lot of, we talked earlier about expertise and this sort of like, oh, I have to be an expert. And now, like, ChatGPT knows more than any of us, right? Like, it's got tons of expertise. So how is that changing? How is AI changing the importance of emotional intelligence?
AI doesn't have any emotional intelligence. That would be the first thing. That's where we come into picture. And I would say that, maybe AI has all the bookish answers or what it has found online. But then EQ will always remain, because for me, EQ stands for the culture which says, I've got you. So it's the EQ which helps us read the room or adapt to needs and make space for us and others to shine. So whether it's LinkedIn or other spaces. And as you earlier pointed out, emotional awareness. AI doesn't have that. So it's us who as human beings who have that emotional awareness. That's what inspires people, or in that, I would like to just put it in quotes, like, follow you, even if they don't have to, because we are passing on that EQ message to them.
So when we start with that connection and that awareness, we build a different kind of relationship, which empowers.
Yes.
Karl, that kind of brings us to the last question in the chat. Does quiet influence naturally align with servant leadership? How would you connect this kind of influence we're talking about with servant leadership?
So, I also want to quickly add to what Kumud was saying is emotional intelligence was always more valuable than IQ. So it's even more so now in the world of AI. That's the differentiator. Emotional intelligence is the differentiator for a successful leader or successful human being even. And quiet influence, yeah, I think there's definitely a huge overlap with quiet influence and servant leadership, because in quiet influence, you are listening. And that's what servant leadership is all about. It's not having the answers and not telling people what to do and being the expert. It's really about working with them, removing obstacles for them, finding out what their challenges are, creating these psychologically safe environments where they can contribute without any fear of being judged or pushed down or pushed out of the organization. So absolutely, I think there's a huge overlap between quiet influence and servant leadership.
I want to end with one question from each of us for everyone who's still watching to think about. My question that I'm going to end with is, if you could have millions of people thinking about something that was really going to make the world better, a message that you were going to share that millions of people would think about, what would it be? Kumud, what would be your question for our audience to think about, to leave with?
I would say that, would we say it's a misconception that visibility is required for influence? Or can we influence otherwise, even without visibility?
Karl, what's your closing question?
My closing question is, what will you do to inspire the world to be a better place?
Abhi.
I think there's been a lot of talk about legacy and how that relates to, in my mind, how it relates to emotional intelligence, because we all want it for ourselves and for other people. So whether it's with our families or any type of initiative we're a part of, what kind of legacy would you leave behind if you stopped needing to be seen as this attachment of being seen, and you started being unforgettable? That would be my question.
All right. Well, thank you all for this discussion. Thank you all for participating. Jackie and the Idea Citizen team, thank you for having us here today. And I look forward to following you all on LinkedIn and staying connected and influencing one another. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.